Welcome to the MrpTech Podcast. This is episode 32. My name is Matt, and this is a weekly podcast where I review multiple platforms, technologies, software, and any other thing that comes to mind that interests me so that hopefully I can help you. And starting off this week, I want to talk about something that happens occasionally in my classroom when I'm working with students and trying to get students to try new things and get involved with technology to help their education and to help them improve test scores, quiz scores, or just help them find resources that will make them more successful as they move up through high school into college. And what I do once in a while when I have a new group of students is I reach out to them and I sort of poll these students on the devices that they're using. Are they using Android? Are they using Chromebooks? Are they using Apple products? Do they have a Windows phone? Just to get a general idea of what these students have available to them at home. And one of the things that I try to do is I try to find apps for them on their particular device that can help them be more successful in my class and in other classes. Most of the time I try to find apps that are cross-platform so that all the students can use the same apps. But occasionally we have to look towards a specific company or specific app store and work with these students on what they have available to them. More often than not, when I take this poll with my students, students are using Apple devices, iPhones, iPads, iPods, over other platforms like Android. This isn't the case all the time, and I'm not saying that Apple is better than Android and iOS is better than Android or anything like that. That's not what my point is here. My point is that I'm trying to reach the students in what they have available to them. And so over the weekend, I stumbled across an article that talked about the Apple Teacher Program. And it was something that I never heard of before. After looking into it, I was really interested in what Apple had to offer for their teachers. So going to apple.com/education/teachers, Apple has set up recently, I believe it was in September, a way for teachers to get involved with Apple to discover the resources that they have in using Apple products in education. So the Apple Teacher Program is a free program set up by Apple in which you can build skills to sort of stay inspired as a teacher. And these skills will help you enhance productivity in your classroom by introducing things like iPad and Mac into a classroom in a way that will get students new ideas, fresh ideas, and tips on how to use the apps that are available to them for free. So all you need to do is go to this website, it's apple.com/education/teachers, and you're going to sign up for the Apple Teacher Program. And all that is required to do this is you have to have an Apple ID. So you type in your Apple ID username and password, and you can sign right in. And the Apple Teacher Program has two focuses. One is for Mac specific, and the other is for iPad specific. And you get to choose which one that you want to do, or you can do both. And basically, you're given a set of 8 different short courses that you can look over with study reference guides on how to use things specifically, such as the basics of using a Mac or using software like Pages, Numbers, Keynote, iMovie, GarageBand. And thrown in are also tips on how to be more creative with the Mac and increase your productivity with the Mac. And these 8 different sections will give you guides to look over to see if you're missing anything if you use some of these programs and software, where to get online help, starter guides, and where to find workshops that you can go to. And after you look through this material for each of these 8 courses, you take a short quiz. It's about 5 questions to see if you know the ins and outs of each one of these topics. Now, for me, when I first logged in and looked over all of these topics, these were on topics that I use every day for various things. And I've been using them for a really long time. So I didn't actually need to look over a lot of the study guides and materials that were provided by Apple. And I took most of the quizzes and passed the first quizzes without much effort on my part, simply through experience. So I went through all of the 8 short courses here for Mac and went through all 8 short courses for iPad. And when you do this, the first 8, you become an recognized Apple teacher. Now, what does that mean? Well, what it means is Apple is giving you resources for using Apple products in a classroom. And obviously, this is going to benefit Apple because they want to get involved with education in as many ways as they can. It's a huge resource for them for income. And for teachers, it's great because they're giving you tips and information that you can use for your classroom if you want to help your students. So after you complete this whole project of becoming an Apple teacher, the Apple Teacher Learning Center gives you access to some free books in iBooks in which you can look over if anything interests you. There's also a neat section called Everyone Can Code, which talks about how you can get involved with students using the Swift playgrounds, app development, learning to code. There are a couple of books, Learning to Code 1 and Learning to Code 2. And I'm sure you can find these resources in other places, but by doing it through Apple Teacher, you're able to have everything put together in one thing, in one spot, for you to look over and see if this is something that you can use in your classroom, which I found really neat. Now, since I just started this in September 2016, there isn't a whole lot to offer right now. But as you finish this Apple Teacher program, you're given a fancy Apple Teacher logo with an Apple logo. It says Apple Teacher 2016. And that to me shows me that they're going to continue to improve this over the next few years. And each year I would imagine a new set of quizzes, a new set of tasks, and more information for teachers. I think that's a really neat idea to help teachers in education. The majority of the projects were basically focused towards how would you use Pages and Numbers and GarageBand and iMovie all together in a classroom, whether you can have students going and conducting interviews with GarageBand and Photo Booth, keeping down notes using Pages, making a Keynote presentation, importing your movie into Keynote, and then finally making a slideshow of everything that you've done with interactive graphs from Numbers and just in how to use all of the software together to increase the student learning. So each time you finish a course, you get a little badge saying that you've completed one of these short courses and you've successfully passed all of the quizzes. And once you get 8 badges, then you're considered an Apple teacher. It's not, a certification by any means, but it does say that you recognize the importance of needing to know how to use software. And by doing so, you'll be able to help students learn on their own. So you're going to find learning resources for teachers. You're going to find inspirational links for teachers. And it's a great facilitator for professional development. And this can easily be geared towards any grade level, any subject area. It's not specific on any type of education. It could be used for college, for high school, for elementary. And it's totally free. And it was actually kind of fun to go through and take these quizzes. It reminded me a lot of the Luminosity apps. If you've ever downloaded Luminosity, it's sort of like a brain teaser quizzes that you can use to keep your mind going and learn new things at a faster pace. keeping your brain active and trying to learn. And that's the way I approached the Apple Teacher program is I just took it basically for fun, and I wanted to go through and see how much I knew. And I would encourage any teacher out there who uses iOS devices or Apple devices of any kind to get access to this free Apple Teacher program. And you can overlook some of these books and resources that they have available. And I'm sure as time goes on, there'll be more. What I found useful by doing this is not only are you getting the starter guides, but you are learning little tricks that Apple wants you to know about the software. For instance, in Pages, there's something called Instant Alpha, where when you put a photo, say, of a butterfly with a blue background on your Pages document, if you don't want the background, Instant Alpha will remove the background with just a couple of clicks. Some new tools that I was unaware of, that Pages could do. I did this all on my iPad, and you could do it on a web browser as well for your laptop if you wanted to. I found it all very easy to use. It was all very well laid out, and I really had no trouble at all. I did it on and off for one day, just short periods of time. I would say probably within an hour to an hour and a half, I was able to complete all 8 quizzes for Mac and all 8 quizzes for iPad. Probably even less time than that. So as an Apple teacher, one of the things that started going through my mind was other ways that I could influence my students and encourage my students to use technology in the classroom. And an idea that had occurred to me in the past was brought up again to me yesterday as I was going through all of this with Apple. And if you've listened to previous podcasts, later on this year, we'll be rolling out Chromebooks to all of our students. And also in a previous podcast, I've talked about some training I've done with teachers in my district for Google Drive and Google Classroom and such. And it really sort of sparked an interest to look into Google Apps for Education certified training. And that might be something that I do in the future as a side project. And I'm going to look into all the requirements for being a certified trainer for Google Apps for Education, so that I would have not only experience with Apple and the resources for Apple, but also for Android or for any other things that students might be interested in. So I'm going to look into that this week, see if it's something that I'm interested in doing. I do believe that the Google Apps for Education training is free, and the certification exams I know are relatively inexpensive, and I've been using Google Apps for a really long time. So as I learn more about these projects, take a look at my Facebook page. It's facebook.com/mrptechreviews. And you'll see as I start posting more things, and I may even do a video. You can check out my YouTube channel by searching for MRP Tech. I may find little quick tips here and there that I just make a quick video and post about the Apple Teacher program over the next week or so. So stay tuned for that type of thing as well. Moving on from Apple Teacher and Google Apps for Education, later on this week, there is an Apple event. Since we're talking Apple today, I've heard some criticism recently about the MacBook Pros and how over the last few years, the MacBook Pros have not been updated in at least 2 years, possibly 3 years. I'm not exactly sure when the last MacBook Pro was released. I was guessing it was 2013, but I could be wrong on that. I have a 2013 MacBook Pro that I use every day, and I've heard a lot of criticism lately about these computers being severely outdated. I would argue with that. Yes, there are newer technologies. Yes, there are the next generation Intel processors that are available that are much better battery life, much more power, run cooler. But I wouldn't call my 2013 MacBook Pro outdated. I do tons of audio editing, tons of video editing, photo editing, web browsing, run virtual machines, sometimes doing multiple tasks at the same time, audio and video editing at the same time, rendering, sharing files, anything that you can imagine, I do on a weekly basis. And not once has this computer ever showed a sign of slowing down or dragging along. But I do see that complaints about MacBook Pros being sold for ridiculous prices, $2,500 for the most extreme MacBook Pro that's out, and keeping it the same price for those 3 years, because newer technology is coming out and you can buy other computers for a less price with better specs. I do see that complaint. But Apple being Apple, those prices very rarely change. And this week, we're expecting new MacBook Pros to be released. And there's rumor mills going around about what is going to be included on these MacBook Pros. Obviously, they're going to run Mac OS Sierra. And there's some new technologies that are speculated to come out, such as a Magic Toolbar that may be released, not been confirmed officially by any means whatsoever. Some are rumored to have a Retina display with a Touch ID sensor and an OLED screen above the keypad, and expected to be announced this week and released in November of some kind. I'm guessing that these laptops will be thinner and lighter, as they have always been. And I would also take a guess that we're going to see the end of the USB 3 ports and going to USB-C, adding some more USB-C ports to the MacBook Pro at least. We may even see more Mac Mini or iMacs released. And who knows, they may even be completely redesigned, not only just upgrades from this internal specs, but we may see a redesign altogether. But let's go back to that price that we mentioned for the MacBook Pros or any Apple product in general. I read an article this week it's over at macrumors.com. This is written by Julie Clover, in which she says that IBM says that Macs are up to $543 less expensive than PCs over time. Over the last few years, IBM has become one of Apple's largest customers. In the first year, since 2015, they deployed 30,000 Macs, and now they have over 90,000 Macs that are supported by only 5 administrators. And at first, there was sort of an assumption that Macs were more expensive than traditional PCs running Windows. And IBM has found that over the 4-year lifespan of most devices, that they save $543 per Mac, $543 per Mac compared to Windows PCs. And they're saving this money through basically support calls. They found that PCs tend to drive twice as many support calls than Mac do. And looking to numbers of purchases of Macs over $100,000 or over 100,000 devices, that's some serious savings that IBM is able to achieve. And IBM employees are also very interested in upgrading from their current machine to a Mac in the future. We've all heard the saying that Macs are overpriced, but the hardware is really great. And if Macs are being used by companies like IBM and growing exponentially and saving IBM money in the long run, is that high purchase price really something that we should all complain about? If it's great hardware and it's going to run great and you're not going to have as many problems with it as a Windows PC, is that purchase price worthwhile? I would say that it is. In my experience, running a Windows laptop from 2005 to 2008, I had a Dell laptop that I used only for recording music. Never ran on the internet at all. And when it came to recording, sometimes it would work flawlessly. Sometimes it would work with problems. Other times we'd get the blue screen of death. And this would be an ongoing struggle time after time after time. And then resulting in quality loss in recordings and even loss of entire live recordings from concerts that I performed in. And after switching to Mac in 2008, since then I have never had an issue with recording. So it goes to show you, some people are not interested in running Windows. Some people are not interested in running Mac. And there are open source enthusiasts that saying running any proprietary software whatsoever you shouldn't do. And believe me, I understand those thought processes as well. I'm an open source advocate, and I try to use open source software as much as I possibly can. And if there's an open source alternative to anything, I try to lean that way and support those open source projects. But talking specifically Mac versus Windows, time and time again, I've seen many companies say that Macs will actually save them money in the long run, mostly through support. And that's something to be considered. So turning this back around to my original topic, inspiring students to use the devices that they have to better themselves and better their education. If students are really into iPhones or iPads over things like Chromebooks or Android devices, we as teachers should find resources to help us help them. I'm not saying we should all go purchase Macs and buy the latest and greatest, because as I mentioned, the 2013 MacBook that I'm on runs just fine and will run just fine for the next several years. But just using resources like the Apple Teacher Program or other programs similar to those that I've just been talking about will help teachers stay aware of the technology that's being used right now by our students. And I think that's a really important thing for us to do. How many teachers in the past have stuck to their guns, so to speak, and not changed their lesson plans and not changed what they do in their classroom, using lesson plans that are 5, 10 years old or even older? I remember sitting in grad school watching a teacher give lectures using things that she wrote up in 1982. And this was in the mid-2000s. As teachers, we cannot allow this to happen anymore. We need to stay current, and we need to move forward, and we need to allow our students to have the resources to meet their educational needs of not only our country, but of the world. We need to step it up a notch, and we need to get our students back on track. Technology is a great resource for all of our students, and we as teachers have a responsibility to keep current with those technologies. So what do you think? Do you agree? Do you think that teachers need to stay current with technologies to help their students? Do you think that MacBooks are overpriced? Or do you think that they save money in the long run? Have you been yelling at your computer the whole time that I've been talking about how much you hate Apple or iOS or Macs, and you don't think teachers should be encouraged to use those in classrooms? Let me know. I'd be interested in what you think. You can send me an email. You can give me some feedback of any kind that you might have. It's mrptechreviews@gmail.com. And you can also check out my YouTube channel where I post videos from time to time. My most recent video is about Ubuntu Studio 16.10, the recent release of Ubuntu Studio, geared for audio production, video production, graphics design, which I may do an episode on soon for this podcast. And to find those on YouTube, you're just going to search for MRP Tech, and you should see a list of all of my videos, whether it's my reviews, the podcast, or just quick tech tips. So thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.